To gather the wisdom of our respected speakers, let's invite our keynote speakers back and also Ms. Alice Lim, Distinguished Engineer of Parallel Chain Lab, on the stage for a panel session to conclude the technology track, moderated by Mr. Ian Huang, the founder, CEO, and chief architect of Parallel Chain Lab. Ian is an infrastructure technologist and entrepreneur with an extensive career in renowned technology corporations, including Westinghouse, Tektronix, Stuttgart, Zilog, Digital Equipment, Hughes Network Systems at VP of Engineering for Mountain View, Newark site. Ian also founded XNet Technology in Santa Clara and brought it to NASDAQ in 4 years' time, with equity investors including JP Morgan, Citibank, DBS Bank, Jardine Fleming, and Hong Leong Malaysia.
He was also president of the Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, Silicon Valley chapter, chairman of the ACM Advanced Computing Committee, and the first visiting chief architect for the Singapore National Science and Technology Board, now called A*STAR. He has been an advisor to MIT Technology Review, MTech, since 2015. Ian is the inventor of 10 blockchain-related patents, 4 issued in the US. He is also an inventor of TechDOS, the SCSI chipset, the priority sectoring processor for the USAF A10 Thunderbolt and RISC, and the inventor of the deterministic and stochastic network protocols FDDI and ATM switch. Welcome Ian and the panel.
Let me first introduce Alice. Alice, she is our architect for our mainnet, and she's very interested in distributed system, and she has a bachelor degree from Hong Kong U, computer science. So that's Alice. Hi, Raj. Hi. Radio, and hi, Charlie. Okay, let's pose, how about this? We'll have some warm-up questions. And then after that, the audience will have the floor. Okay, okay. Could the projector warm-up questions? Huh?
You can just ask them. They don't have to be projected.
Okay, the first is, because I don't remember all the words. The first one is, let's see, come on.
It's there.
Okay. Everybody see that? What problems would blockchain be a good solution for? What are other ways to, this is not the first question.
Yeah, it's a fine question.
Oh, it's a good question, but it was not the first one. Okay, why don't we first start from Charlie and go this way, and next question will go the reverse direction.
Right, you can look over there too.
Right. Yeah, so what problems would blockchain be a good solution for, and what are other ways of solving the problem? Right, there are different kinds of blockchains, and they're useful for different things. A private blockchain is basically useful for anything where you have a log today to make the log tamper resistant, and it provides value there. The public blockchains with anonymous participants, the cryptocurrencies are sort of the premier application for that, and people have found other applications. I don't really know what the full set is.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if it's really truly a private blockchain, the security properties are really the same as a database. And a database can be more conveniently formatted. You don't have to keep all data forever. It can be organized alphabetically and so forth, because whatever it is, you're trusting that, that enterprise. Now, if you also add to it the sealing that I was talking about before, which an independent person can guarantee that you haven't changed the database, then that's, you know, sort of, that gives you an extra thing. But if all it is just an internal database that entity can change if it wants, then it really is not at all different from a database. Now, you know, the public blockchains, to have truly anonymously maintained cryptocurrency, that's kind of a novel application, and I'm not sure how else one would do it. Yeah. Sometimes you might want a consortium of more or less independent companies that are working together, but you want to assure that they all agree on the same order of transactions. And for that, a blockchain would be useful.
I think I can make 2 points here. My first point is that nobody really defines what a blockchain is. I mean, you can be very pedantic and very restricted and say that blockchain is just this particular kind of data structure where there's a batch of state transitions and they're linked by hashes. And that's one way to define a blockchain. Not very helpful, not very useful for anybody. You can also define it more completely, or more in some other ways. You know, you can qualify it more and say that you not only need this data structure, but you also, for some things, for a system to be called a blockchain, it needs to have some kind of fault-tolerant consensus. It needs to be open to public participation. It needs to have a currency. It needs to have smart contracts. Or you can sort of sit in the middle of the two extremes, and this is where I would sit personally, and just say that blockchain is this data structure plus some fault-tolerant consensus. And as a distributed systems programmer, this is what's most maybe not exciting to me, but this is the definition of blockchain that's most generally useful. And I think it's useful for any problem where you need to replicate a state machine. Some blockchain defined in this manner would be useful for this. The second point I'll make is that a lot of the things that people ascribe to blockchain, or blockchain will be a solution of this, it's not actually intrinsic to blockchain. You can have, say, smart contracts without blockchain. You know, you can digitize, you can describe your legal, your laws in code, in deterministic code, and deploy it on a normal computer. And what I find important in my work is that making sure that, you know, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If blockchain taken as a full package turns out to not be very useful, we can extract some of the small parts in it and make that useful. You know, with Ethereum can go away, but I'll still have Solidity, and I can write useful smart contracts with Solidity even without deploying to Ethereum. Yeah.
Oh, could I do a quick follow-up? Yeah, it's not exactly clear what blockchain is. So one time I was kind of on an evaluation board for a bunch of university research, and so they were talking about all, in the blockchain section, people were talking about their research. And in the middle I said, you know, some of this stuff is really quite interesting, but it is so far afield from what I assumed blockchain was that I no longer, given a technology, I would no longer be able to tell you whether it's a blockchain technology or not a blockchain technology. So how would you define blockchain? And then they all started arguing with each other. Someone said, oh, it means that you must have, you know, smart contracts, or you must have distributed. Whatever it was, there was nothing that they really agreed on. So if you're kind of confused about what is blockchain or what isn't, it's sort of important to realize that nobody really quite agrees on it. There might be some people that say, I define it this way, but as long as the entire world doesn't have the same definition, it's not terribly useful. Yeah.
Thank you. Wait.
Okay, all right. Can I interrupt here a little bit? I'm sitting behind on the screen.
Well, Gene, let's,
Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to say, basically what is happening right now is people are taking, and I agree with actually Alice that people are taking extremes. And there are many good applications of blockchain. And I will just give you examples of two, which basically are not really possible with other methods. One is this thing that we applied it to supply chain. It could be called supply chain, but it was like basically for the agriculture. When a produce is produced in China, it is transported by a truck from XYZ to another warehouse, to another X warehouse, to another truck, to another warehouse, then it ends up in Walmart, and then ends up in my basically dining table. So the question is, how could you keep track of all that? Right now, there is no system to keep track of that. I'm just telling you, there's no centralized system, and there's no distributed system. It is not possible because China, US, this and that, there are so many things involved in here, right? But on a blockchain, people can record who they gave it to, and then the people can record where they kept it and how they kept it. And then all at the end will happen is that there is a QR code on that item, on that apple, and you scan that QR code with your phone, and that will tell you the whole history that this is a product of China. This is a, was kept at 100-degree temperature in South America or wherever. So you know the whole history. That is not possible to do today. Okay, I'm just telling you, this is not a currency application, but supply chain is where blockchain is kind of, very much required. Second application, when we say private blockchain, it's not that it has to be private to one company. So let's think about the bank blockchain. Bank blockchain, banks, about 2,000 banks or 300 banks got together and they said, we will have our own blockchain, right? And then the money can be transferred very easily between the banks without any restrictions. Right now, it takes, 3 days, basically. When you buy a stock, you don't get your money for 3 days. Why? Because the money cannot be transferred in less than 3 days. And so those things like, a big consortium is also a blockchain, can use a blockchain. It is, even though it is private blockchain, it is consortium. And then it gets, and the consortium can be as big as you want, right? And that gives you the best of both worlds. I mean, it gives you the best of the private world, best of the, one centralized world. So I think if you really think about it, there are many new things that have come up in the last few years, which were not possible before.
Okay, let me interject my opinion here. My question is, why do I have to follow the definition created by you on what blockchain is? Why can't I amend it or change it, the definition, to my advantage? So long it is appending a bunch of data with hashes. And if I do that, why can't I have the flexibility to come up with ideas and solutions? Why do I have to follow your definitions? That's how I do it.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that, or there are people who are answering it there?
Say again?
Yeah, I would actually like to answer that, which is that
okay, go ahead.
I don't care what you call something. Once I understand how the technology works, I mean, you could call it a bicycle or a piano or whatever. The name of it doesn't matter. So sure, you could have your own definition and call it a blockchain, even if somebody else wouldn't call it a blockchain. The only thing that matters is whether the particular technology you've put together is an appropriate and well-engineered solution for the particular problem.
Well, and the other thing that's important is that the people you're talking to know what your definition is, so that when you say it, you mean this. And if I think it means something else, then we could end up seeming to disagree when, in fact, we didn't disagree.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Basically, I mean, so we all agree actually that the blockchain doesn't mean that you have to do one way or the other. The very first example of blockchain was Bitcoin. And the distinction was that this was one of the first cryptocurrency that survived. Most of the cryptocurrency before that died within a few months. And so what it is that through the career of Nakamoto, he came up with 4 or 5 things that are very fundamental for security, for trust, for and things like that, decentralization, and people are now working all of them. They're breaking one by one each of them. So, for example, Ethereum doesn't follow everything that Nakamoto said, right? Particularly the proof of work. So people will break it, and so that's fine.
Can we have the second question, or
Maybe there's questions
are,
from
you-
the audience.
are the administrator able to go on to the second, or if you are not able to, I'll ask. Okay. Blockchain as a core platform technology will of course change and improve in time. Just like the original Unix, we all know how bad it was, the Bell Lab Unix, how too simple. And also the database technology, start from DB2 and IBM, and so hierarchical. And now we're going to NoSQL. What do you think the next frontier will be for blockchain? Because it's evolving. Why don't Alice, you go first?
Well, I can answer this in 1 or 2 different ways. I can try and make a prediction as to where it will go, or I can give my opinion as to my wishes as to where it should go, right? Should or will. I'll answer it along the second lines. I'll be a bit of a contrarian here and say that a lot of blockchains are very over-engineered these days. And a lot of the new ideas, though exciting to us computer scientists, I can just spout some buzzwords, but they don't really mean anything. But things like ZK rollups are exciting. Things like optimistic rollups are exciting. Things like composability between different blockchains are exciting. But I want to see some of the older ideas, actually, of the early years of blockchain, in particular stuff like light clients, make a resurgence. And I think this relates to what Charlie said. Charlie said that a blockchain is only as secure as the weakest link, and the weakest link in most cases is the application. A lot of smart people are working on the core technology. The core technology is getting very advanced, but on the client side, on the application side, we're making big compromises. We're centralizing a lot of things. One thing that I really hate, I think I'm going to offend people by saying this. I really hate centralized exchanges. I think people should store their own tokens. I guess I'm a bit rambling here, but I feel like the next frontier of blockchain should not be like developing the core technology. The core technology is so complicated and advanced already. We need to think about the client side and how to get ordinary people to interact with the blockchain in a secure way.
Okay, can I say?
Raj, yeah, please.
Okay, so basically I have seen the technologies move forward over the last 50 years. And the way they move forward is that whatever technology succeeds and survives will take the latest other technology and ride on the success of that one. And so blockchain so far has been, in my view, personal view, it has been a success. And now we have to look around and see what are the other successful technologies. Clearly AI is one. Then quantum is kind of coming through. The energy is actually energy saving. Greenness is another one that is kind of becoming hot. So if nothing else, I think one of these things will change the blockchain in a better direction. AI, quantum, energy conservation, And then, of course, quantum proof security. Quantum doesn't have to be by itself, but it could be just some part of quantum that will help blockchain, or quantum proof security itself, even though it is not quantum based, but itself it has changed the blockchain. So all this will happen, and things change every few years. So I would not be surprised if the blockchain we see next year, or in few years, is quantum proof blockchain.
Okay. Yeah, well, with the proviso that as I look at what the evolution has been so far, I would not have predicted any of the advances that have come along. And so, take it with a grain of salt. I would say that most likely the advances will be driven by whatever the killer apps are, whatever the applications that people want to deploy, that the functionality of the blockchain will evolve in a way to make those applications work better. If I could specify my preference as to where I'd like to see the advances, it's sort of in the design of how smart contracts are written. That we saw a talk yesterday on how to find bugs in smart apps. It really should, the smart contracts really should be written in languages that make it much harder to get things wrong, and so that things can be much shorter, because shorter things have fewer opportunities to have bugs in them. And I think that trying to design something where they don't follow the path of everything else, where the applications get bigger and more complicated and less secure with every generation. But I wouldn't go so far as to predict that that's what's going to happen.
But okay, there's something interesting that Charlie said that I concur in principle, but I don't think it will pan out in real life. You said that the requirements of killer apps are what's going to drive the evolution of blockchain technology. I wish that were the case, but very unfortunately for me, like as a computer scientist, as a programmer, public blockchains especially, the technology is not being different by apps, it's being driven by what people think is going to increase the value of the token, and what the computer scientists think is going to increase the value of the token. So I feel like a lot of the developments in public blockchains today don't really improve the app experience, unfortunately. I try to combat that in my own systems. I try to combat that.
I can give you lots of examples of technologies that were not designed for clear application. I mean, a very simple example is smartphone. When Apple founder came up with the smartphone, there was nothing that we were waiting for, that, okay, I cannot do my photography, or I cannot do this, I cannot do that. Everything was there. But then he brought a technology that really made everything so easy. All right, so the technology drives the application sometimes the application drives the technology. And the same thing happened for the clouds. When Amazon brought in the cloud, there was nobody asking for it. But basically what happened was, at the Amazon, they had so much extra capacity, they said, okay, let's rent it out. And they sent out a rental agreement to all the people who wanted computing, and then now it became cloud computing. So a lot of things have happened where technology was first, the application came later. Sorry about that, yeah.
So the one thing I would add is, I'd like to disagree with you about humans should keep their own tokens. So there's a quote I wrote. I wrote this thing in the book that after I wrote it, it was like, yes, that expresses things. Everyone should memorize it and take it to heart. And I've seen it on quote boards. So what I said was, humans are incapable of securely storing high-quality cryptographic keys, and they have unacceptable speed and accuracy when performing cryptographic operations. They're also large, expensive to maintain, difficult to manage, and they pollute the environment. It is astonishing that these devices continue to be manufactured and deployed, but they are sufficiently pervasive that we must design our systems around their limitations. So the things about people maintaining their own wallets, people all the time lose the keys and lose all their money or have things broken into. So yeah, depending on all of this money. I don't keep my money in a mattress because I kind of believe the bank can protect it better than I can. So I think that's, you know, sort of putting an unrealistic burden on people to expect them to be able to do this. Yeah.
I think I agree. I mean, I agree with you, but this is like an argument for let's trust central authorities. And I think people in the blockchain space are typically averse to this sentiment. I'm not very averse to the sentiment, but well, yeah, people are.
Yeah.
All right, next question, please.
Actually, Ian, can you ask the audience to ask questions now? Because I think they're losing time fast.
Okay, all right, we're running out, we spend too much time here, so the audience, please raise your questions. Okay, yeah, mic over there. Make sure it works.
And probably we shouldn't all answer every single question, just to.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. It's Mike from McKinsey wanting a mic, basically. I couldn't resist saying that. I think going back to the original question in terms of what problems are trying to be solved for through blockchain, I think in the commercial landscape, most of the CEOs and board members, to Dr. Radia's point, are not asking about the technology. They don't care about the technology underlying. What they care about is what problem is trying to be solved, what is the use case, and what are the efficiencies that blockchain are going to bring. In my experience, there's been over 100 use cases. I think Raj mentioned supply chain management. It's nothing new. It's 10 years or more that's been evolving in terms of blockchain. I'd be really interested from the panel members to hear about more of the innovation use cases in context of explaining it to an ExCo member or board member. And two elements were ESG, in terms of how blockchain can optimize ESG requirements and what the views of the panel are there. And secondly, probably most importantly, a use case that supports the Web3 metaverse environment, although some of it is hype. Practically, the world is changing. How does blockchain sort of optimize that? Example being digital identity. So the question is twofold. View on ESG, and secondly, view on digital identity as a use case.
Radia, you have thoughts on
Let me put in my 2 cents. I've been thinking about this ESG thing almost 3 years ago. And this is what I learned. First of all the ESG are big companies or governments. They will not go to a brand new innovation technology, particularly if it's from any small company. Okay, and truthfully, true innovation seldom come from big company. Okay, you put the two together, and so the big company usually don't do innovation, and then the big corporation and the government, they don't do business with small startup company. Singapore is an exception. Okay, the two of them are basically block any true ESG deployment. It's just they've been talking for a long time. And the big corporation expect the government to subsidize it, and the small company expect the government to subsidize it, and so it's just what I call is a round robin, passing the buck. That's how I feel about ESG. I don't think it is real. It's just all talk, and the small company cannot wait for you to talk, and opportunity may come 5 years later. No small company, if they are smart, they will go after that because they have to survive first, And I don't have, 5 years later, you might have a business opportunities. And in the meantime, I have to go through all this politics. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned distributed identities using blockchain, so that's something that's getting a lot of noise these days. And I have a whole talk about that. It's like when somebody said, oh, that solves the identity problem, it's like, really, what do you think the identity problem is? And so I have a whole talk about all the various challenges in identity, how, frankly, nothing is quite done right today, but distributed identities is just a way to get a unique string. But there's no problem getting a unique string. I have millions of unique strings. I have my credit card number, I have my several email addresses and so forth. So I have my username at various websites. That is not a problem that needs to be solved. So it doesn't do anything better than we can already do, and it doesn't answer any of the challenges that we have today. But that's a whole other talk I would love to give sometime.
Sorry, could I just add to that? I think it was more the case of going into the digital economy and interoperability across different platforms. So at the moment, as everyone knows, wallets are not the most user-friendly for the mainstream, and also they are not the most secure in terms of the elements you were mentioning before, right? In terms of losing the keys, etc. So it was more a case of, is there a use case for a digital identity which is interoperable, where that cannot be achieved by a traditional system? And currently it doesn't in totality exist today. So it was, I just wanted to clarify and get your views on that.
Right, yeah, I can't see any use for it.
Okay, let me try. Maybe I haven't really thought about it as much as Eddie has done, but I will tell you what. So if I wanted to vote sitting from my home, today it is not possible unless, I get pre-register or something. But I think if there was a way, and in some countries they use blockchains for actually voting. But what happens is you have to get some identity, you have to register that identity with the government somehow, and then you vote, and then it turns out, and it is possible to do without actually blockchain because there are websites that allow you to do that, is that you can vote and nobody will know who you voted for. But if there was an auditing to be done, then of course people could audit and see whether the counting was correct or not. So anyway, I don't know which kind of problem it falls into, but the question of identity, which is unique, and still it is pseudo. It is still pseudo, so nobody can one-to-one say, well, this Raj Jain voted a Democratic or Republican. That's the kind of thing can be done. And I won't have the answer to basically all the ID questions, but I think we can move on to the next questions on the blockchain. There are so many questions coming up.
Do you want to choose a question?
Okay, I'll choose from ML. If blockchain becomes widely accepted like the internet, how would that change the society?
I would say
okay.
Blockchain isn't going to change society. The applications that use blockchain are going to change society, and that really depends on what those applications are. One could imagine using it as a payment system. We'll hear a lot this afternoon about the evolution of NFTs and all these other things that are going on, and that so certainly that's one way to change society. There's probably opportunity to change society for the worst. Who would have guessed that the killer app for the internet would be some that allows you to post pictures of your kids and spread misinformation about the politics of the world?
Yeah, actually, I will tell you what, information flow will be very much affected by blockchain, can be affected by blockchain, because basically what is happening in the last several years is that the information is deepening so fast and so quick that, and that is because of the internet, by the way. But the same thing with the blockchain. The blockchain is a ledger which stores some kind of information, whether it is your money or whether it is your cryptocurrency or whether it is a supply chain thing, right? That information right now is not easily available because those things are not available to everyone. But if the blockchain succeeds and it becomes as common as internet, people could do many of these things right on their, I would say phone, on their own computer. A lot of information could come through, which is right now hidden somewhere.
If I may, I'd like to take a shot at this. When I was much younger as an engineer, I was working in California and Silicon Valley, and my boss, he always fly back to New York from San Francisco. And he always criticized me. Why you want this? You don't need this. When I designed IBM computers, I don't need this. I got fed up with it, and I went up to him and say, why do you fly? Why don't you ride a horse and go back to New York? It works, okay? So the Ford motor changed the transportation world, and the airplane also changed the transportation world. Now, we are too early right now to know what, in my opinion, what blockchain will change the internet. Really cannot see that right now, but we know W3 and Web3 and Web2 are not the same thing. So Web3 will have an impact in a society. And how big it is right now, not sure, but I think it is going to Web3 and Web2. It will get married somehow. So I can pretty much foresee that would be the change. Web3 and Web2 will merge or converge. That's all I have.
Another question, maybe?
Okay, another question. In a few, oops, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Debarshi. I'm from KPMG Singapore. My question is specific on cybersecurity. So with all the financial institutions, especially the banks, have spent millions and billions today on their existing technology and securing them with their firewalls, network segmentation, and whatever. Now with blockchain applications coming in, especially, let's say, asset tokenization, custody, and other digital asset capital market space, do they need to spend more in a different set of cybersecurity applications to protect these new blockchain applications? And do you think it's going to cost them, again, millions and billions to do that? And do you see that as a stumbling block for adoption of blockchain applications in the financial institutions?
I'll take that. The challenges are who do you trust to certify your name or your key? How do you protect your private key? All these things are challenges whether you're using blockchain or not. So, I'm not sure that blockchain changes that. All those other things will still have to be solved. And I don't think blockchain necessarily makes it more difficult.
Blockchain is nothing magical. At least, like at an infrastructure level, you're still running it on the same sort of computers, on the same sort of networks. The security of the consensus algorithms is something that's unique in blockchain. That's not something that you think about in centralized systems. But to secure these algorithms, I think it's not really cybersecurity people who would be doing this. It will be like people who design the algorithms and write proofs for their safety.
Okay, one last question. Go ahead.
Ian, I wanted to follow up on Anand Chandrasekhar, founder, IRA Technologies. I wanted to follow up on your Web3 comment and a question to the panel, really. Do you guys believe blockchain is an essential technology for Web3? Or, in your view, are these independent motions? And I do have a follow-up to that, depending on your answer.
Okay. I'm not sure we have the same definition of from everyone about the definition of Web3. My definition is Web3, the ownership is the user, not the Web 2 is the big corporation or the government. So, you know, if that is the definition, and I think blockchain is enabling technology for Web 3.
I think I can Web3, okay, let's say we define Web3 as a web that's controlled by users. I'm actually a bit skeptical that blockchain will, at least as it's construed, will actually be a force towards democratizing ownership of the web. And this is like, relates to my comments about blockchains becoming too complicated, and my retort to Radia when she said that human beings are not good as operators of a cryptographic or distributed system. Blockchains, the fact that blockchains are so complicated, and the fact that the only people to really understand blockchain fully, especially the more recent blockchains, you kind of need a PhD in computer science. That will not give power to users. That will give power to the small subset of people who knows advanced cryptography or distributed system stuff. I think blockchains need to be more simple, need to be more operatable by single individual persons for this Web3 democratizing vision to actually be enabled by blockchain.
Yeah, by the way, I have a PhD in computer science, and I can't even operate a smartphone. So, so it's a smaller set than you're talking about that can do this.
Yeah, I guess I'd respond that blockchain and Web3 are not necessarily tied together. Either one could, you know, succeed without the other. But I believe that there's been so much, you know, joint work between them that I think that they're at this point quite bound, and so it seems quite likely that they will proceed together.
So the follow-up question I have to that is, if they are linked, and you know, if you assume the same sort of ubiquity as we've seen for Web 2, for Web 3, that sort of implies that the efficiency of the blockchain implementations have got to be dramatically better, so we can assume there's enough power to do this right?
Are you assuming a single blockchain for all information all over the entire world?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Well, I'm not 100% agree with the thing here, just said here. And the reason is, I think blockchain will evolve. And I think some of the claims are really not realistic, but somehow the general public believes them, and that will eventually go away. They cannot sustain. I mean, bullshit cannot sustain. In the real world, you can only lie to some of the people sometime, but not all the time. Somebody said that, I forget, some US president said that. But
There are some people capable of lying all the time to everybody, but yeah.
But,
Some US presidents.
So it is evolving, and some of those false claims will fall off, and will make things. Internet is not simple. Ask her. Internet is not simple. The routing algorithm is not simple. Okay, you have to be a mathematician. So you know, when you talk to the mass public, it's not simple. Just the testing. IP version 6.2, why it takes so long to deploy? Okay, we were talking about it in 1991. Long time ago.
1991.
Why it takes so long to test it? Because the testing of that takes a long, long time. Okay. Okay.
I think I can engage directly to your, well, you're kind of, you were saying that if blockchain is to become ubiquitous, we need some kind of multiple orders of magnitude improvement in the performance of blockchain, like in TPS. I'd like to kind of push back on that. I think a lot of people are being misleading. You know, some people complain, oh, Bitcoin has like 7 TPS and then Visa has like 40,000 TPS. 40,000 is like the absolute peak of what Visa needs to handle. Actually, even for these massive payment networks like Visa and MasterCard, most of the time, 99% of the time, these systems only need to survive maybe 1,000 to 5,000 TPS, and there are hundreds of blockchains today that can already do that. And with Moore's law, maybe Moore's law is dying, we can expect. I think the technology is already here today. The capacity is already here today for blockchain to be much more widely adopted than it is. The constraining factor is not the capacity of the blockchain system. It's really the creativity of the application developers. And I still have not seen application developers develop what something Charlie described as a killer app. I think we should be worried about that first, and then think about optimization later.
Right. I mean, the more widely used something is, the greater the pressure is to make it more performant, because people are willing to, people can save money by buying a high performance one, so they'll put their engineering into doing that. I think that'll happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that it'll get simpler, because the complexity doesn't necessarily, interfere with the performance, and so that'll grow sort of in proportion to how many people are working on it.
Just one last comment. I can't help it, sorry. There are many blockchains out there, okay, and it's always made the best person win, okay, number one. And let's look back. How many disk drive company when they first come in the 80s? Many of them, and they're all friends. Most of them are spin out from either IBM or Control Data or Sperry Univac, okay, and there were many of them. And now how many left? One. Seagate. And that's one example. CPU, how many people doing CPU design? There are how many CPU, and now how many of them left? Intel. And then there's AIMS, okay? 2. So there will be, we must not be confused by the many different approach, because ultimately, may the best person win. That's how I look at it. So, well, anyway, thank you. I think I'll return this to the MCs. Thank you. Raj, thank you. Charlie, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.
Thank you.